All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about something every single manager has to get good at, staffing. This is all about handling an organization's most powerful and, let's be honest, most unpredictable asset. It's people. So let's get into the art and science of how to get this right.
You've heard this a million times, right? People are our most important asset. It's on posters, it's in annual reports, but think about it for a second. What does it actually mean to treat people like an asset and not just another line item on an expense report?
And that's the real question, isn't it? If people truly are your most valuable resource, how in the world do you manage them in a way that leads to long-term success? That's exactly what we're going to break down today, how to turn that big, nice-sounding idea into a practical, powerful strategy.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with why people are such a unique asset. Then, we'll talk about what staffing really means today. We'll get into planning for the future, and I'll show you a much better way to do it, using a systems approach. We'll even break that down into a simple 4-step cycle. And finally, we'll see why all of this really matters.
So let's kick things off with something kind of weird when you stop and think about it. We all agree that a company lives or dies by the quality of its people, right? They're the engine. But if they're so incredibly valuable, why don't they show up on the company's balance sheet?
Seriously, think about it. A company's financial statements will list its buildings, its computers, its cash, but never the talent, the skills, the creativity of its employees. It's a massive blind spot in traditional accounting. That's why some thinkers like Rensis Likert pushed for something called human resource accounting, a way to actually put a value on the people driving the business. It's a tricky concept to implement, but it highlights a huge truth.
So if we're going to manage this human asset the right way, we have to start by understanding what staffing actually is. Because the old school way of thinking, just filling an empty chair whenever someone quits, that just doesn't cut it anymore.
The difference is really night and day. In the past, staffing was totally reactive. A position opens up, everyone panics, and you rush to hire someone. The modern view sees staffing as a strategic, ongoing process. It's about planning ahead, being deliberate in who you choose, actively developing people's skills, and constantly evaluating performance to make sure the whole organization is getting stronger.
And this really gets to the core of why that old, reactive way of doing things is so dangerous. If you're always just reacting, you're always one step behind. You're basically managing by crisis.
Just hiring as needed is an absolute recipe for disaster in the world we live in now. Things change way too fast. This kind of short-sighted approach leaves you with huge skill gaps. It forces you into rushed hiring decisions, and it makes it almost impossible to adapt when new opportunities or challenges pop up.
The solution to all this chaos, it's called Human Resource Planning, or HRP. To put it simply, HRP is all about creating a real strategy to meet the future people needs of your organization. It's about looking ahead and being proactive so you have the right people in the right jobs at exactly the right time.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? Well, the most effective way is to treat it like a system, a connected, forward-looking plan where all the pieces work together instead of just a bunch of separate, one-off hiring tasks.
What's so powerful about this approach is that it forces you, as a manager, to answer the really big questions. Do I have the right number of people with the right skills? Am I actually making the most of their talents? And the big one, am I ready for what's coming next? So here's what that system looks like from 30,000 feet, based on a classic management model. It all starts with your company's big goals. Those are your inputs. Those goals tell you what kind of people you'll need. That information feeds into your staffing process. And the output? A well-staffed team that's much easier to lead and manage toward those goals.
Okay, that's the big picture. But how do you make it work in the real world? Well, we can break this whole system down into a practical 4-step cycle that you can use over and over again.
Now, the key thing to remember is this is not a one-and-done checklist. It's a continuous loop. First, you figure out where you stand right now. Second, you look into your crystal ball and forecast what you're going to need. Third, you build a strategy to get from here to there. And fourth, and this is crucial, you check your results and start the cycle all over again, getting a little smarter each time.
Step 1 is all about a reality check. You gotta know what you have before you can plan for the future. This means doing a proper job analysis, really digging into what each role does and needs, and writing clear job descriptions. Once you have that clear picture, you can immediately see if you're overstaffed in some areas, which costs money, or understaffed in others, which leads to burnout. Next up,
you put on your fortune teller hat. Forecasting is a two-sided coin. On one side, you forecast your demand. How many people and with what skills will we need? This is driven by things like company growth or new technology. On the other side, you forecast your supply. Where are these people going to come from? You have to look inside your own company for promotable talent, but you also have to look outside at the job market, what competitors are doing, and even big demographic trends.
So once you see the gap between the team you have and the team you're going to need, it's time to build a strategy. You've basically got 4 main levers you can pull. You can invest in your current team and train them up for future roles, or you can go outside and hire new talent. And for both of those groups, you can decide whether or not to provide additional training. The truth is, most companies use a mix of all 4.
And finally, we have what might be the most important step of all: evaluate and update. This is the feedback loop that makes the entire system intelligent. If you suddenly realize you have a critical shortage of talent you didn't see coming, it means there was a flaw somewhere in your plan. This step lets you find those flaws, fix them, and make your whole process better for the next go-around. Without this, you're just flying blind.
So, let's pull all this together. What's the big takeaway? Why does getting a handle on this systematic approach to staffing matter so much for you as a manager in training?
It's because this is how a company stops saying people are its most important asset and starts acting like it. This is the proof. A process like this shows that an organization truly values its team enough to invest real time and energy into planning for their future, which, by the way, is the only way to secure the company's future too.
When you get right down to it, a system like this is what turns that cliché you see on the wall into something real. It transforms a nice-sounding platitude into a living, breathing strategy that actually drives success. So that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. When you get out there and you're leading a team, are you going to treat staffing as just another chore on your to-do list, something you do when a chair becomes empty? Or are you going to treat it for what it really is, a core, fundamental strategy for your success and the success of your entire organization?